Okay, the clock on the wall says it's 7 o'clock. We will call the meeting of the Winona County Planning Commission to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'm going to deviate a little bit from the agenda. And would you introduce your assistant?
So this is Heidi Hun. She is new to our department, or I should say to the county, and she's one of the executive assistants. So she does the county board meetings, but she very well might do our meetings too. So this is our planning commission. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. At this time, does anyone have any objections or a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I second.
Kelly moves and
I second.
Vince seconds the agenda. All those in favor of the agenda as printed say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The agenda is passed. Okay, did everyone get a chance to look over the minutes of the May 17th meeting?
I have a question,
Go ahead, Don.
and I think it's on, didn't we review 2 dockets at that meeting?
No, it just seemed like it.
Just the one?
No, it just seemed like it.
Just seemed like it.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyhow, back on page 6, under the, with the following conditions, item 2. I thought we had addressed that there were no parking conditions needed. Well, maybe there were parking conditions proposed that exceeded the underlying ordinance. Was that the case? And then we deleted those additional ones and relied upon this, in which case this wouldn't have been needed because the ordinance is always there.
Chair, that the parking and loading standards was in the final draft of the findings that was approved, at least according to what I'm looking back at.
Does that answer your question, Don?
If that apparently is a matter of fact, so yes.
Okay. So you're not questioning the minutes as written then?
I move to approve the minutes.
Yeah, I second that.
All right. Steve moves to approve the minutes and Donnie seconds it. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the May meeting say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The minutes are passed. All right, petitions. Docket PC 6-21-18-01 to consider the petition of Popular Street LLC represented by Sam Carlson and, oh boy, it's a Pollock land. LLC represented by Dave, the landowner, in regards to the following conditional use permit request at 31313 Veterans Road. Staff?
We have a quick presentation here and a video as usual. Summary of the project. The petitioners proposed to start with 1 employee with growth up to 5 employees as part of their proposal. Start with 15 to 25 vehicles for sale at the site with growth up to 50 vehicles. That would be part of the petition. No reconditioning, detailing, or servicing on site. That'll all be done off site at a partner location. The on site is only for sales, so it'll be showroom and lot. Hours of operation is listed, 9 to 6, Monday through Friday, Saturday 10 to 3, and Sunday closed. We have a map of the site, which is also in your staff report. It's approximately 5 acres in size. The actual site is much smaller. A lot of that 5 acres is on hillside and up across the road, which isn't really usable space. If you look at the aerial photo, the building and the paved area are really the usable areas. Behind that, there is a cliff, a 20-foot cliff face behind and in front of the neighboring dwellings to the south and the east, on the south and the west, I'm sorry. And there is a little bit of sloping and a ditch around the back that kind of holds a little bit of water, a little bit of storm water. You'll also notice in this area, my pointer isn't working, but out here towards Veterans Road is there's a wide right-of-way that is part of the I-90 right-of-way. So that extends further up into what looks like usable space, but a lot of that driveway and grass space in the front is actually right-of-way. A couple of items of note, parking. The county zoning ordinance does include some parking standards for commercial uses and business uses. In this case, we're using 1 parking space per 400 square feet of gross floor space. The building is 5,780 square feet, which would require 14 parking spaces. That would be for customers and employees. Petitioners have identified 18 parking spaces, so they would meet our parking requirement in this case. Here's a site plan that the petitioners submitted along with their application. It's in your packet. It shows the flow of traffic that can come in and how it would move around. Also, parking spaces are in red. And then the blue is a potential lot space for cars. You'll notice that their original, this version has some parking spaces within the road right away. And when that was brought to their attention, they removed those spaces. So they do not intend on parking within the road right away, unless, of course, they were able to get some sort of approval from the road authority.
Would that be Winona County, Lou?
I believe in this case it would be township and possibly they probably want to check with MnDOT since it is MnDOT right away and see what they would think of that area of the right of way. Being that it's off of a township road, they may not have a problem with it. And then signage is another piece I want to draw your attention to. The county zoning ordinance allows for on-premise signage, 1 freestanding sign per property, and with a maximum height of 40 feet, 10 feet property line setback, 100 square feet per face of total surface area is a limiting square footage amount, and that could be for building-mounted signs as well. If there are lights proposed, the signs must be internally illuminated. No flashing lights or moving parts as part of the signage. What they're proposing at this time is to have a sign on the building, so that would be a wall mount sign, and as far as I know, there's no illumination proposed. We'll show the video. This is from Veterans Lane. You'll see some of the lighting, existing lighting there, some of the landscape features around the site. We'll pan to the north. You can see Veterans Lane and I-90 to the right of the frame. We'll pan back across the site. You can see the building. Back behind, if you want to pause it, Ann. You can see behind the building the roof line of a neighboring dwelling. That's about as good as the view gets from the site. In summer, leaf-on conditions anyways, they are deciduous trees, so there may be a little bit more visibility in the winter, but and as we pan across, you'll also see a little bit of the cliff face kind of behind the building and how that's vegetated, so go ahead. And we're panning to the south and the intersection, the on-ramps at I-90, and back around. And that should be about the end of the video. If you have any questions, I guess we can take them now, or we can wait to hear from the petitioners and open the public hearing, and feel free to ask them.
On your view to the south, I thought this was the one north of Cooley Drive. I didn't see Cooley Drive on your shot to the south.
Cooley Drive,
Not Cooley, Bobcat, I'm sorry.
there is that dealership there. Is that what you're talking about?
Bobcat dealership.
The Bobcat dealership. I think it's just south of the frame, like kind of around the corner of the bluff. Because if you want to go back to the video,
Yeah.
and rewind it, I don't know. Okay. When we pan back that way.
Yeah, you pan back in a little bit.
But yeah, the Bobcat dealer is to the south. And I believe it's past, you'll see the entrance to Queens Cove subdivision. And if you go past that kind of,
Oh, Bobcat's south of Queens Cove? Okay.
I believe so.
Okay. Where's the old Amish furniture store?
South of Queens Cove, north of.
Bobcat. So this is a third building there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
This was.
There's the road that goes to Bobcat, right?
go ahead and pause it.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of tucked back up in there. It's not around the corner. It's kind of
Just beyond the trees there, I guess. And
Go ahead, Don.
can you get back to the slide about the sign ordinance? Does that 100 square foot pertain only to pole-mounted signs or any sign on the building?
It pertains to the wall mount as well.
Wow.
Yep.
And no illuminated lighting, moving lights?
Right.
I should think the planning commission would want to review that at some point in the future. Signs are an important thing. And lastly, when you went back to the 400 square feet per parking space, I missed your closing comment. They are now proposing to meet that requirement?
They're proposing 18 potential parking spots, so and 14 would be required by ordinance.
There again, I think the one per 400 square feet overstates the situation in many cases. How often do we see the parking lot down at Walmart and Menards even nearly full? You know, we're doing a lot of parking that we don't need. But anyhow.
Mark?
On the video, can you show us, the main thing for me is the septic field. I was really having a hard time with all the rock and right-of-ways of where they're going to put their septic field.
So with the septic, and maybe I can just, this might be the better view to look at it. Currently, the tank comes out in this direction, and then there's a drain field, a couple of drain field lines that come out underneath the
It's already in
parking lot.
existence, right? The septic's already in existence?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
it's an old system. It's under the parking area.
But this used to be the Amoco station,
Yeah.
the black part of it. And then the green part. Yeah. And there, you're limited to 40 feet. That sign must have been 120 feet tall. Is the chain drive sign 40 feet? That's gotta be more than 40 feet.
It's 40 feet now. I'm sure there's a lot of non-conforming signs that have, that have been out there for a while.
So they don't have to update their septic field in? I thought,
It would be, I think it's one of the conditions as well.
and that's what I was wondering how they can do
They
that if
would
they're
need
limited.
to address that. Currently, this is part of the Dresbach project area for their community sewer. So yes, once that situation is figured out, they will either have to connect to a community system if that system goes forward, or at which time they stop. If they decide to go with on-site systems in Dresbach, then an on-site system would have to be designed.
But that system functions that's there right now, doesn't it?
It probably is getting rid of sewage adequately. It's not treating sewage, so it would not be in compliance.
They can go with a holding tank, can they, huh?
They could.
That's probably the solution. They're not gonna have that much, they're not gonna have that much sewage use there, I would
It's
say.
not a high water use facility, and there's one bathroom inside, and it's not going to be a huge issue. There'd probably be one that a holding tank would be adequate for.
Is that anything that we're tasked with, or is that point of sale when it transfers ownership?
When it transfers ownership is the key for the septic system.
And that's statutory, right?
That's right.
So we don't really have to address it.
Well, we know that it's not conforming. I mean, all that I have on there is as a condition is that they address it along with the rest of the systems in Dresbach that we know are not conforming.
Any further questions?
If there's room under statute not to upgrade, does the county ordinance exceed statute? And then that would require a variance as well.
No, I mean it's been flagged as being non-conforming, so
Under the Dresbach study?
You're right.
It feels like that should be handled the way all other septics are handled. It was a point of sale issue, and I mean, we don't leverage them into doing something that's statutorial in nature so they can get a permit.
A lot of cases we do. There are triggers for if you are getting a permit, you need to upgrade your septic system. And if you're in shoreland district, you have to upgrade your septic system with any permit or review.
Is this shoreline?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't remember. We could certainly find out.
And so did they purchase it recently? So there was no point of sale is what you're saying. You've had it for a long time.
We've never been there. Dave has had it, and Dave is not here at the moment, but he's had it for, I think, 03, 02,
Since when?
03.
03.
02, somewhere.
When that new part was built, probably.
Oftentimes, a banking relationship will force an upgrade. So if there is room under statute for it to continue to be used as it is, I should hope that they can resort to that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the informality of being able to get information from the petitioners, but because we record this, the recordings have a hard time picking it up. So there might be some kind of important pieces in the decision-making process that are getting lost in the taping. So, we could either pass over the microphone, or maybe when the petitioners have their time up here, we could kind of group those questions. If you
Okay, thank you. Are you finished then, Lou, or?
I'm done, yeah, unless you guys are done, I'm done.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, at this time, does someone representing the petitioner wish to speak? State your name and address and say what you have to say.
I'm Brian Rodecki. I live in La Crescent, 1301 Poplar Street.
Sam Carlson, La Crescent, 4238 County 21.
Go ahead.
So obviously there's some questions. I guess I'll kind of just start from the top of just what we're doing, and we'll kind of work our way down from there. That's okay?
Just make it as brief as possible.
All right.
Thank you.
So we are trying to get this conditional use permit to operate a small to mid-sized used car dealership. As Lou stated before, part of that is this establishment. We're really going to focus on sales. Brian owns Apple Auto in La Crescent, Minnesota, and a great reason why we decided to do this is a lot of the reconditioning and detail, most of it is going to happen at Brian's facility, and then the cars will show up ready to rock and roll. So there will be, in instances that people are test driving them, we'll have to bring them back in and clean them up a little bit. So there will be some light detailing and those types of activities happening. So there won't be, it's not quite none, but the primary place is going to be at Brian's. The types of cars we're looking at are kind of specialty vehicles, so things where people are kind of hunting for them, so that's why internet sales is very important to us. So when looking at this location, we chose it because not just the drive-by is kind of there, but it's going so fast. We like it because it's accessible, and it's easy to get to, and those types of reasons. So to answer one of your questions before, so we are going to sign a 3-year lease once the conditional use is granted, and we do have an option to purchase. And one thing we are waiting for, like Lou discussed, is the septic issue in Dresbach. So to do something is kind of premature because 6 months, 1 year from now, it could be changed and all solved, or we'll know that it does need holding tanks or something else. So that's something that we are eager to find out the solution to it as well. Any questions yet, or am I going to keep going?
For the record then, would you restate this about the length of ownership there? Do you have your knowledge of it?
So we are, I guess, kind of here representing Dave Protaski, the actual owner. He's owned it since the early 2000s. He did do the addition, so you can see kind of in that green box, that's all an addition that he did put on. He operated a boat dealership out of it for many years. I think it was a satellite location from his main business, American Marine. It was like a satellite delivery area, and they did some sales there, I think, too.
Any other questions? Do you have anything further to add, or?
Realistically, we touched on that there was no lighting on the sign. We haven't necessarily decided that. We're going to comply with any ordinances involved with that. If I'm not mistaken, that signage would have to be approved at a later date anyways, permitted and whatnot. Is that correct?
Yeah, you could permit it as part of your development certificate or
Doesn't require the planning commission's approval, is what you're saying? Okay. And are you asking just to have a sign that maybe has a light shining on it, or are you like a blinking, flashing sign?
Absolutely no blinking, no flashing.
Okay.
The type of illumination would kind of be dependent on what works best. We're going to be pretty conscious of any light pollution. It's going to be pretty minimum to begin with, drastically less than, for example, the Bobcat dealer. We're looking at having something on the building, so any light would be shining towards the east versus having something like the Bobcat dealer where the light's kind of emitting at this 360-degree setup. The neighbors are elevated by quite a bit, so we don't see any real potential issues, particularly with how conscious we are of being a good neighbor.
Yeah, so the east facing side would be the only side. So if we did decide to go a lit sign, backlit, or with lamps on it.
Like where that sign is right there or something is what you're thinking?
possibly in that space, size, we have to just kind of see. But whatever, we'd always be in agreement with any ordinances or regulations.
That sign must be.
Pardon
I'm
me.
sorry.
Pardon me. So you're talking about a building mounted sign and not a sign in the yard?
Correct.
Okay.
So same, yeah, so
Yep, okay.
That sign is too big, I would guess. Is it grandfathered?
that's just a real estate sign. I mean, it'll.
But nevertheless, it's,
So we'll be in line with whatever county, township, we understand it's near the interstate, so whatever, if there's some MDOT stuff too.
And if I recall, signage is something that we don't have to deal with at this meeting, so
Yeah.
that's something that they do out of the planning department anyway, so.
Yeah. What I was thinking is there's a comment from a neighbor that was submitted, but the sign is on the front of the building and the residences are in the back. So it's something that wouldn't.
Well streamed.
Yeah, it wouldn't be visible. Well, yeah, for sure in the summer, but it wouldn't be visible anyway from behind.
Don?
nevertheless, Kelly, signage might be worthy of discussion at this point. If that was a boat dealership sign, converted to the realtor sign, it may have some grandfathering provisions you might want to look into.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the petitioners, representatives? Chris?
Yeah, just a short one. So there are yard lights like today for lighting at night? And they are currently lit at night, and that is something you're going to continue. I would assume that you would want to have the area with the cars lit for security.
Yes, there are 3 standing poles that have lights that shine down. They're very similar to the same ones or the same style the Bobcat dealership has, and they operate with. So there's those 3, and then it does have a couple security lights on the side that do kind of shine down there too.
Okay.
That's adequate for us.
All right, great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, thank you very much. At this time, do I hear a motion?
I'll move to open public hearing.
We need a second. Vince seconds the motion to open the public hearing. All those in favor of opening the public hearing for docket number 6-21-18-01, say aye. Opposed, nay. At this time, the public hearing is now open for this docket. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward, state your name and address, and say what you have to say. And try and limit it to not more than 2 minutes. I will grant some leeway, but if you start repeating yourself, then I get tough.
Evening, my name is Brad Lawson. I live at 47277 Queens Cove. My concerns, I did call once we received the notification of a conditional use permit. And it's within signage. You sound like you're pro signage. Some of us are like, well, when we look down, we're out at the river and so on and so forth. We understand there's businesses, and I think it's a great spot for you guys. I welcome that. I think it's a real positive thing. The building will finally get some use and get into some maybe economical impact for the area, which is great, and it's a plus. But I am concerned for lighting the signages, overnight and so on and so forth, because there are residents that live in that area. And let's face it, some of them are real stargazers and others not so much, but like to look out and not see something shining right at you. So if we can keep if it's a box sign and it's shining towards the highway, great. If it's shining back at the residential areas or side to side, let's try and keep something that's not too obnoxious to other residential areas, because it is a mixed use area. And the Chain Drive, or Bobcat dealership now, which is now fully rated Bobcat, they've got, I believe, some lighting restrictions that goes from like an hour before business opens and an hour or 2 after business closes. And I would think that it would be logical for these folks as well as for the Chain Drive folks. They do have security lights on that at least shine at their equipment to keep people from messing around or vandalizing or anything. So that would also be needed. I would sure think that you guys would be thinking about that. But, you know, the reason I bring it up is because if I've got some pictures of the old mobile sign that was 102 feet or 120 feet in the air, and that sucker would light up, and it was like, and then there was another one that was just to the south at the Bobcat dealership. That was, if you recall, an old golf station. And then when that closed down, it just was a big round sign that said gas. That thing was 122 feet in the air and was lit all night as well. And those are some pretty obnoxious ones. Once they're gone now, we'd love to see, you know, some subdued, 40 foot's great. So I was concerned about the time of lighting and so on and so forth. Good.
Thank you. At this time, for the second time, is there anyone wishing to speak to docket number 1? For the third and final time, is there anyone wishing to speak to docket 6-21-18-01? Please step forward and state your case.
Move to close the public hearing.
Okay, Steve has moved to close the public hearing, and Mark will second that. Are there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of closing the public hearing for docket 01, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is now closed. Is there any discussion amongst the planning commission?
I think it's a great use for the spot.
Yeah, it sure beats emptiness.
Yep.
Don?
Going back to the sewer issue, I see that in the staff report, it tells us on page 10 that it is in the shoreline overlay district. So there, I suppose there are sewage disposal regulations that come into play there. But nevertheless, if there's leeway for them to operate as it is without upgrading between now and whatever's determined about the Dresbat district, sewage district, I would hope that they could avoid any upgrade somehow. And I don't know when we get to our conditions what proposal I'll make there.
Yeah, and that's, we have been actually administratively allowing people to continue on the way they have been. This is throughout the service district area down there without upgrading until the community decides, because we don't want to start requiring upgrades that then either may make it harder to have support for the system, or upgrades that then people have to then connect or abandon their system that they just built. So we've been putting all that on hold, but just tracking them so that depending on what happens with that community system, we can follow up afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
This would be no different.
Chris?
Yeah, Lou, on that point, is that a thing that we would need to mention in the conditions?
When we get
It's
to
number 2 in the conditions.
Right. I'm just asking since we're already talking about it.
Yeah, I think it's in the condition. I don't know if there's something you want more specific
wait.
added. We can consider that, I guess.
I don't see that it says anything about waiting until Dresbach makes a decision, blah, blah, blah. So my question is that something that we need to identify in the condition or?
Council, what do you say?
I would say that if it's going to be handled pursuant to their standard practice, that should be sufficient.
Thank you, okay. And so we should say standard?
I don't think
No.
we need to.
Okay, awesome, thanks, appreciate it.
Don?
I'll try to address that when we get to conditions, if
All
I
right.
remember. And on the hours of use thing here, I'm always uncomfortable with putting hours of use restrictions on a property permanently in a conditional use permit based upon owner's perceptions at this point in time. So maybe I'll have something to say when we get to that condition.
I don't doubt it, Don.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, let's go through the findings of fact. Is there any one of the, 9 or 10 findings of fact that anyone has any objections to? 7, I guess it is.
No, I'm fine with all of them.
Anyone?
You want a motion to accept?
I certainly do.
Make a motion to accept them as presented.
Steve makes a motion to accept the 7 findings of fact as presented for docket number 01.
I'll second.
Chris seconds it. Don?
Discussion.
Yeah.
That doesn't get us into conditions.
No, not yet.
Thank you.
All right. All those in favor of accepting the 7 findings of fact for docket number 1, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we have passed that part. Now we have to get into the following conditions. And do we agree with the 4 following conditions, or do you have points of discussion, Don?
Under condition 2, I would hope that it would be explicit about respecting existing policy towards the Dresbach Sewer District.
Okay.
And that we amend it to address that.
Mr. Chair, and I guess, or not, and rather, the Pollution Control Agency is not going to look favorably on this being talked of as a policy in the department. It isn't a policy as much as we're trying to be respectful of the process in a low-key kind of way. If we have a distinct policy about that, I think there's going to be squawking at the Pollution Control Agency level, because waiting, or, it's clear that they're supposed to do something sooner rather than later. This process is playing out in Dresbach, and I think it makes good sense for this property to also be part of it. But I don't know if I dare call it a policy.
Go ahead,
Steve.
My first thought, right when I saw it, was it almost seems like it goes without saying what's written in the condition, that of course the petitioner has to adequately address wastewater issues, and it seems odd that we're calling them out any differently than any other property in Dresbach. I mean, they've all got this issue to deal with. My first thought was it shouldn't even be there. They have to do the right thing, and we don't know what the right thing is going to be. We don't know how the sewer system is going to play out. They're going to be held to those standards at that time.
Don?
I agree. We oftentimes talk about how important it is to have local control, and now here we're speaking against local control. I'll move that we remove condition number 2.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And Don moved to remove condition number 2, and Steve seconded it. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess I'd like staff to weigh in on this. I think I recall seeing such statements in the past. Is this something that you frequently put in as a condition?
Oh, well,
Okay.
I guess in the SSTS part of the zoning ordinance, the permit is required to obtain a development certificate for any property in which permit is required. Approval and issuance of the valid SSTS permit has to be obtained concurrently or before, prior to the development certificate being issued by the department. Elsewhere in the chapter, it states that if the use changes or the occupancy changes, then we have to evaluate the system, and if it's substandard, it has to be brought up to standard. But we will work with these folks and, through the process. And Lou is very familiar with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not abnormal for us to include conditions like this in the conditional use permit. That being said, if you want to remove it,
You still really have that obligation whether we state it or not.
Right. I mean, it's the same with condition number 1 and the same with condition number 3. And actually, it's the same as condition number 4. They're all would apply whether you have it as a condition or not. It's nice to be able to reiterate in the conditions and emphasize that for the petitioner and for future people that are pulling out this out of the file and they're wondering what needs to be met, this is an easy reference to be able to say, these are issues, big issues with this petition that are need to be addressed. So you got to think of it as in the future, somebody's pulling, they're doing a record search. What are they going to? They're going to be finding a recorded document, and in that case, the conditions may be the only thing that keys them in that there were these issues that were addressed during the conditional use permit. Likewise, if staff is back looking at through file, or for some reason there's a court case that's related to it, this is an easy way to it's a flag that says, hey, these are issues that we discussed and considered, and that were applied to this property at that time.
Counsel?
And one other thing, the purpose for conditions on a conditional use permit is to address any things that came up during the process. So any questions in this particular case, it might apply to the public health, public safety aspect. So having those as conditions means it's a lot easier to make findings that say this condition is met because we have this condition attached to this permit. So without that, you have to come up with reasons that they meet the criteria when there's no condition that says they have to fix something. So does that make sense?
I think so.
I think, I'm sorry.
Don, you go next.
Mark wanted to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see fingers wagging, but I don't know in what order.
I would like to see it stay there, because if 5 years from now, the neighbor has a polluted well, and he's looking around, where did the sewage come from or something to pollute the well, and then they pull out this thing going, well, he didn't have to update anything. And maybe it would, I think it belongs in.
Excuse me, Mark. Did we get it? Now it stopped. Okay. We had the drum beat here. Okay.
I guess I would also, I think clarity is a good thing. And so just for purposes of clarity, I think it's a good thing to have them listed as the staff has identified them. So, yeah.
Don.
I'll watch the motion fail, but I'll have be proposing an amendment after that.
Okay. At this time, if there's no further discussion on the amendment to strike number 2 and the conditions, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Striking.
Of the striking, yeah.
Aye.
All right. Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
I believe that the amendment fails. Don.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose an amendment to condition 2, ending rather with a period, inserting a comma, and something to the effect, while in recognition of the present policy of respecting the local control of the proposed sewer district. Sure, something to that effect. Counselor?
I think that adds complexity to, we don't know for sure who's going to have to hook up to the sewer system, who's not going to have to hook up. You're kind of making them say they're going to have to hook up, whether we know that's, we don't know what's going to play out there.
And?
Well, you're saying that the way you
if the sewer district doesn't become a reality, we default to statute. And in the interim, it's
we don't know where the sewer
respect
system,
the process down there.
But we don't know the length of the sewer system. We don't know if it's going to go down there or okay. Do you have the answer to that?
Okay.
Again, it is in county policy. We're watching the process play out, but there has been no county board or other staff administrative policy about this process.
And then, I mean, if they decide they want to put in a holding tank and it completely complies, motion says they have to do what you said they have to do, which is to hook up to that sewer system.
Sure. You mean my amendment?
Yeah.
And I have no problem with that.
Even if it's not what they want to do and they can comply without it, you're taking their rights away.
If they can comply without it?
Yeah.
I don't see how they can comply without an upgrade.
We don't know how many acres they have or whether they could produce a system that can meet their small volume of water, or if they can put in a holding tank and they don't want to hook up. And I mean,
I don't want to force them into an upgrade that might only be required for 6 months until the district comes up with.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I think that the county staff has stated that they are trying to work with folks in that area, knowing that there's something coming up. The fact that the MPCA might not appreciate us putting something else in here about that would take away flexibility from the petitioner. And requiring them to do whatever the community is planning on doing also may take away flexibility for the petitioner. So if you want the petitioner to have the maximum flexibility, I'd say the way staff has written it is probably the best way.
So is there a second?
there wasn't.
Oh, we don't have a second? Oh, well then, this discussion is basically out of order.
No, it just failed to lack of a second. It's not out of
Right.
order.
It just failed for lack of a second, unless somebody wants to second it. Okay, that solves the problem. I was beginning to think we were going to have more pollution issues here than we already had. Is there any other comments or questions or discussion on the conditions for usage? Don?
Condition number 3, hours of operation. I hope that the petitioners aren't unnecessarily restricting them to a permanent restriction through this conditional use permit on what they're perceiving to be needed hours of operation now. And if they'd like to expand upon that, that might be appropriate. And in view of condition number 4, that restricts their lighting to an hour before, is it an hour after hours of operation? They couldn't have any lighting on Sunday because they're closed.
I don't believe, I'm sorry, Eugene?
Yeah.
I don't believe item 4 has anything to do with lighting. It's just talking about the hours of operation.
Yeah, it does. Number 3 says.
3 is lighting, but 4 is not lighting.
4 is not lighting?
Yeah, but they're connected then.
They're connected because hours of operation are stated in
On
4.
Sunday, you can't have lighting.
Go ahead, if you would care to explain yourself.
So number 3 was the lighting or hours?
Hours.
So in a sales organization, if a deal's happening at 3 o'clock and it's going to take two hours to finish stuff, I mean, we would like to do the deal. So restricting us to hours is kind of, you can't buy, I got to come back tomorrow.
So it isn't, I don't think it's lighting, I think it's the sign.
And then the sign, especially if we're
yeah.
just on the front and not a large monument sign or anything like that.
So it's, 3 is just the illumination of the sign. It isn't your yard lights or lights inside the building.
4 is the hours of
And
operation.
4 is the hours of
Yep,
operation.
so, okay, so.
I'm sorry, yep.
The lighting of the sign, I totally agree with your comments that the large mobile ones were a little obnoxious. But that's why we really are focusing on this east face. The south face, there will be no lights because you can't really see it from most angles. But the east face, we can get the interstate. As far as, if those lights aren't bothering anyone, because if you stand in front of that building and look the opposite way, you cannot see any homes. You see highway and grass. And then if you turn and look south, you cannot see any rooftops or houses. So I guess the lighting issue, I'd like to look at that a little bit.
Staff, please, what does the ordinance say exactly about lighting of a sign in terms of hours of operation? Can you put that up?
The zoning ordinance doesn't say anything regarding hours of operation and signage or illumination.
It does not, but we're interjecting it here.
We are, we were adding, that condition, was, yep, we are. That's based on, neighbor comments.
Don?
I will move that we strike condition number 3 and rely upon ordinance. And the signage, when it comes up, is a issue under the ordinance.
Is there a second to that amendment?
I'm sorry, are you striking which one?
3.
3.
Is there a second to this?
Because this superimposes what's in ordinance.
And I'll second it just so we can have a little more discussion on it. I'm trying to compare this to the neighboring business, the Chain Drive or Bobcat dealership. 1 hour after, is that how that works?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so I mean, just in the interest of fairness, I want to treat their business the same. Mm-hmm. I don't want to put.
I think the intent of the condition is to limit any obtrusive lit signs past the hours that it's needed, or past the hours of operation.
Is it restricted then?
Like, so it's not out in the middle of the night.
So they can't light any signs on Sunday because they're not open? Is that
correct?
Does that seem? I mean, do we? If I own the business, I would want to advertise on Sunday too, during the day.
I mean, I guess the intent is that the light wouldn't be on Sunday, and usually when it's lit, it would be, I guess, at night. I think that's what the concern is, that it's on all night and causing a problem. Yeah. So I don't know how you.
But in the wintertime, you don't get many hours of daylight.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think
what about if we granted them to be open on Sunday even though they're not asking for it? Then they could have their sign up.
But they have 3 p.m. on Saturday also.
Also, is that a possibility?
You don't have to be open.
If I may interject just a little bit, there's some vast improvements in the lighting and the signage versus the signs that we're talking about with Chain Drive or the Bobcat dealer or whatever we're talking about. Those lights are kind of a full 360-degree type of situation. We won't be putting something up that will have that type of pollution or those types of concerns to begin with.
The way it is written, you can't run them. You can't run any of those lights.
And I agree. We would like to,
even if you have a much more environmentally friendly option that's not polluting. We're saying you can't have them on after 4 o'clock on Saturday, and you can't have them on Sunday at all. And I think that's being really restrictive.
Anyone else on the commission have any comments?
So we got what's the motion, and the motion now is
the motion.
I do have a comment, I guess. I'm assuming that when the Bobcat location went in, that neighbors had an equal opportunity to comment, and each and every petition is its own petition and has, the conditions and the neighbors' viewpoints about it are part of that uniqueness. So I guess I'd say, if lights during the day don't help a lot because it's daytime, and I guess I'd recommend that we keep it as is.
I guess at this point, if I could interject, Kelly, I presume that the Bobcat one was constructed or issued or whatever we're going to call it before we had this part of the ordinance, or an ordinance that applied, or what's the
You know, I don't know the background on the Bobcat dealership, CUP, or how that came to be, and I just know that it was part of we're trying to honor a comment that we got during the process from a neighbor. I mean, if you don't want to include it, that's fine.
I think we want to honor that too, but
We have to be reasonable.
yeah, I think the intent maybe should be that when there's a certain time of day, whenever closing time is, we don't want lights on all night long, beaming up into their.
I think it's a matter of how you word it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So if the
This is a unique piece of property, Kelly. It is immediately fronting the right-of-way of an interstate highway.
it's always been used for this type of purpose.
It's
Really.
always been in use for commercial purposes, and it is in a community development district. And we shouldn't be imposing regulations through our conditions that exceed present ordinance.
Mr. Chair, that's actually what conditions are for, so, just so you know.
Okay. Chris?
So, the motion that's in front of us now would be to totally strike 3. And I would not hold up this entire conditional use permit just for this condition. But I would like to respect the request of the neighbors. So what I'd like to know is if there's any room for negotiation of between 10 and 4 a.m. or if you are determined that this simply must be struck from the conditions.
My intent would be that they could have reasonable lighting hours all week long and not have to shut down all their lighting on days that they're not open or days that they shut early.
Sure. So you would be open to a condition that said something like the sign needs to be off between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., something like that.
That'd be, I think.
Is that agreeable with you people?
I guess, since we did give the petitioners a chance to address us outside of when the petitioner address was supposed to happen, I'd like to also hear from the one neighbor who did.
Okay. All right. The petitioner first, and then then the neighbor will get his chance to speak.
So we obviously talked about this in depth. We put a little packet together and looking at maybe amending this, and we are okay maybe having it this limit for a sign that really affects the area compared to a sign that's just in front facing the interstate. So if it's something for a monument sign or a pole sign that's very limited, and I totally agree with that. I live near a highway and I see traffic and car lights all day long and all night strong. So I totally get that. So would you like to see something to just kind of what we're thinking about? And maybe look to amend it a certain type of sign to get that hourly limitation?
Let's hear from the neighbor first.
Well, our big concern is that I can go back to when the chain drive Cooley Bobcat now is the name. I'll just give you guys this photo. That's that was taken back when the mobile station was still there, and that is from up in Queens Cove. So by saying that none of the homes can see that particular piece of property is wrong. That happens to be in a green, I believe, situation as well when there's leaves on the trees. But you can look right down on things, and that sign was like obnoxiously tall, lit from both sides, and that thing glowed all night long. And that was objectionable to basically everybody in the area. I took a kind of a survey, and these folks sound like they're doing exactly what we would hope that someone would do. The sign is facing the interstate instead of facing 360. It's not 150 feet in the air. You have a 45-foot restriction now. So things have changed since the last time I had been involved. There was a statute on the books that said if you abandon the building and or were no longer in business, you had 35 days to take down your exterior signage. So that particular sign stayed up for like 2.5 years afterwards, and they finally took it down. So there is some sort of statute, or there was, it's floating around, maybe it's changed now. But what we're hoping for is some sort of a, lighting of the sign. We think it's a great, I welcome these guys. I think it's an awesome location for what they want to do. We're all for that, but hopefully having the lighting so that, when you're in that mixed use, that we're not all night long looking down at something going, it's like a giant LED thing shining in your face.
If I could ask a question?
Do it a little bit.
If the signage is on the front of the building and there are lights illuminating that signage, you wouldn't have a problem with that?
Probably not, unless there's from the ground shining up and then they go over the top and you can see there's homes right behind it. They'd be blasting right at the house, but it sounds like they're wanting things that are downlit and or the sign lit itself. Have at it. That's perfect.
Okay, thank you.
The thing where everybody's trying to avoid is having that spotlight shining in your eyes. You could understand if you were there, you wouldn't want the same.
Sure. Thanks.
Hours of use, the Cooley Region guys, if their sign is on from, an hour before and an hour after on a Sunday, just to get, some lighting during the course of those winter dark hours, I don't think anybody's objection to it. It's when it's sitting there glowing all night long, people object to that, but there's homes right behind that one as well, so.
Thank you. Don?
I'll speak once more to removing condition number 3. I think the situation's well covered by present ordinance.
Okay. Now, Ann, did you get
We don't,
this? Okay. Steve?
yeah. So is there a motion? The motion's still on the table.
Yeah, the motion is still on the table.
It's been seconded.
Okay,
Yeah,
He seconded it.
I did second it,
Steve seconded it, and Donnie made it, right?
yeah.
Okay. Now, is this relevant to what we're discussing?
Just a few examples of what we were thinking. So if it's helpful at all, and maybe it's clear enough the way it is right now.
We can pass them around.
That's another copy.
Yeah.
Bottom 2 photographs there.
Yeah, that Kirkland's sign, that isn't gonna bother the people to the back.
Okay. Did everybody get a chance to see these?
I'm gonna make a motion to amend the motion that's on the table.
Okay, is this,
From removing the condition to changing the language. From after the word restricted to, strike the words 1 hour before and after the approved hours of operation and replace that with restricted to 4 a.m. to 10 p.m.
now, this is a friendly amendment, Don? You accept that?
Could you,
No.
could you, oh.
Yeah, but I was,
It's not a friendly amendment. He needs a second.
it's a hostile.
It's a hostile amendment.
Could you just say it again for my benefit?
Okay, so I move to amend the,
I just want to be clear, are we restricting the time when the sign can be lit or when the sign should be off?
Yeah, that's
The
what-
way you phrased it means that it's only between, it would sound like 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. is when we'd have lighting.
Yeah.
oh, okay, so,
I think he wants it the other way, Council.
Restricted to
Any
use.
potential illumination of signs are restricted to the
yeah.
hours between 4 a.m. and 10 p.m.
Restricted from use between.
Oh, two.
no,
Oh, nope.
restricted to
Restricted
4
to.
a.m. to 10 p.m.,
Yeah.
meaning they can't
That's
use it
7
from.
days a
That's
week,
correct.
right?
Yeah,
I'll second that.
I hope you guys aren't getting sick of me yet. We just had a little discussion here. We were looking more for like 6 to 12, and we kind of just had that where it was amicable.
What do you mean by 6 to 12?
6 a.m. to 11.
6 is more restrictive than what we're doing.
Well, you're 4 to 10.
We're letting you have it.
they're trying to get
Not
more evening
beyond
hours.
from 10 to 4.
That's it.
10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Cannot
that's-
be on.
we're saying it the opposite way, but that's exactly right.
We're saying at 10 PM, you have to shut them off, and you can't turn them on until 4 AM.
Yeah, so
We're shooting for,
12, you want them on until 12.
yeah.
Okay.
And you want to accept that it's from 12 to 4 they're off? Because in the summertime, it's daylight until 10.
Yeah.
I seconded that, so.
Is everybody else as confused as me as to what we're actually talking about now?
At this point, the motion on the table is that it would be restricted from, to no use between 4 AM and 10 PM. Motion was by Steve, seconded by Kelly.
That's an amendment.
To use.
That's
That's
him.
an amendment to the motion to remove the condition entirely.
Yes.
It was signs and any potential illumination of signs are restricted to the hours of 4 AM to 10 PM. Okay. I seconded it. Motion's been made, seconded.
I'm just thinking of the neighborhood. If it gets to be 10 PM and you're, wanting to
Sit on the deck.
wind down, it's,
Well, it's up to the commission what hour you want to put there.
Well, the motion has already been made and seconded as such, so I think we need to vote on that one.
All right.
Or at least discuss it.
Do we have any more discussion on the amendment to the striking?
My discussion would be that it should be tied to sunrise and sunset.
I think that really,
That-
let's make the planning department really work. Let's see, what time today? We'll drive down there and see.
Call the question.
All right.
Wait, but
He called the question, so,
This is-
Wait a minute.
this is did you accept the friendly amendment?
no, this is a
Not a
totally,
friendly amendment, it's an
this is a hostile amendment.
It is. Oh.
That has been made and seconded.
And it was second.
So we're just,
This is new territory for me, okay.
All right.
it's happened to me before.
All right. The question has been called. Counsel, would you read what the amendment is?
The amendment would be to, rather than strike the condition number 3, to modify it to, that the petitioner comply with the requirements of chapter 9.9, advertising devices and signs, and any potential illumination of signs is restricted to between the hours of 4 AM and 10 PM.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment to the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion for the amendment is that it passed, or the results is that it passed. Now, do we have to,
We have to vote on my motion.
and then we have to vote on his motion, right?
But it's been amended now.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, is there any discussion on the motion, original motion?
So the only discussion was they're asking to go until 12 o'clock. I feel like we've really given you a lot more than what you had really presented here, which was just an hour before and after business and not even on Sunday. So, I mean, that's what came before us.
County did.
We just heard how we want to respect both the petitioners and the neighbors. And we've heard from both the petitioners and the neighbors. And their proposal from 12 o'clock falls to be acceptable within that perspective of both petitioner and neighbors. So I'm going to oppose any motion.
It's your prerogative.
So I'd like to ask the neighbor to come to the podium. What are your thoughts on if we, whether it's lights are shut off at 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock?
10 o'clock seems reasonable, but, I think that you're going to need some sort of lot lighting, and if it's on the face of the building shining out towards the highway, to be honest with you, it's not objectionable to any of the resident. That's what we're trying to accomplish, is not having it blaze in your eyes. As long, what we're more concerned with is a monument sign that would be shining in either direction. So I mean, if it's on the building and it's.
Did you see their Kirkland proposal?
Yes, I have, and it's shining out towards the interstate. Leave the thing on all night if you'd like to. I mean,
So if we-
that's the way I look at it. It's,
we could still amend it
the
to
whole
12
objection
o'clock.
by any of the neighborhood areas is that it's not some sort of a monument that's, you know, casting everything all over the place.
I will support 12 o'clock and 4 a.m.
Okay.
So we have to amend it again. So I'll move to amend it to midnight.
Stephanie?
Second.
At this point, we're so far off of the original motion that perhaps we should
Defeat it.
defeat it and then go back
Okay,
and just
great.
have it be clean,
Okay.
figure out what the hours are you want and do one.
I retract what I said.
All right.
I retract my second.
It's been suggested by council that we
Defeat this messy motion.
vote on the motion, original motion. So unless there's any additional discussion, all those in favor of the original motion say aye. Well, that's silence. All those opposed to the original motion say nay.
Nay, my own motion.
Okay, it's been defeated. So now, Don.
We'll go, can you restate yours with 12 and 4 instead of 10 and 4?
You want me to make the motion?
Sure.
Just a second, Steve. Council?
To read what we previously had with 12 instead of 10.
Yes, I would.
Condition 3 would read, the petitioner complies with the requirements of chapter 9.9 advertising devices and signs, and any potential illumination of signs are restricted to between the hours of 4 a.m. and 12 p.m. Well, I guess that would be 12 a.m.
Midnight.
12 a.m.
Yeah.
Or
Midnight in there.
Yeah, midnight,
I'll
yeah.
put midnight in there, make it clear.
So I move what Attorney Nuttall said.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in, Donnie.
Does that pertain to the site lighting?
No,
This is
No,
signage.
no, no.
That's clear.
it's just
Yeah.
a sign. Yeah, it says.
Okay.
Illumination of signs.
Donnie, you got nervous hand syndrome.
And it works.
All those in favor of the,
Can you please come to the.
yeah.
We don't want a monument sign, or,
Well, we
You
understand
don't
that.
have to.
so if we could just have no restriction and then say, but no monument or pole signs. But if it's too far, I
We
understand.
have advertising devices and signs.
If I could offer an option, perhaps, maybe we say, so just to get a little bit more refined as to what we're talking about, what we're proposing, and what's being proposed. The first part of the condition, the petitioner complies with the requirements of section 9.9 advertising devices, signs, and any potential illumination of signs are something along the lines of internally illuminated, placed on the east side of the building, facing the highway, away from the homes, as to not cast light onto neighboring properties. Something along those lines.
And that would, then there would be no proposed hours of restricted use in the front.
Right, but it's in
I like
a,
that.
it's addressing what I think that they're
So
proposing.
then we
what
should just
say
defeat the
is
motion that's on the
okay,
table again.
I like that.
And wouldn't allow for an
And lighting that sign on the front of the building does provide site lighting, so.
Which would be a huge advantage for them and security, yeah.
I like that. So what do we do? Defeat this
We have to
motion?
defeat another motion here.
Stephanie would rather have us amend it.
All those, is there any other discussion? All those in favor of this motion, say aye. Deafening silence again. All those opposed to the motion, say nay.
Yay.
Okay, now, does Stephanie have what we need, or?
Lou, if you can kind of restate what you said.
You're not supposed to be able to vote against your own motion.
Feel free to help me with the wording here as I go. Okay, petitioner complies with the requirements of section 9.9 advertising devices and signs, and any potential illumination is, how about, and signs are located on frontage of the face fronting the road, Veterans Road.
So that was the east side?
The east side, I think that is.
Right-of-way side.
Yep. And illumination is cast away from neighboring properties. Maybe neighboring residential properties. Does that sound?
Yeah.
Read it back and see what we have. And, help me out if you have a.
I think that was good, except for the how about. I'd leave that out.
Crafting conditions on the fly is always difficult, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Petitioner complies with the requirements of Chapter 9.9, advertising devices, signs, and any signs shall be internally illuminated and placed on the east side of the building so as not to cast light onto neighboring properties.
Any lit signs?
I don't
But
think they want
but
to.
internally illuminated, I'm thinking you got a light shining on that sign. Is that, I don't understand what internally illuminated means.
Internally illuminated would be contained within the sign, so it's more one of those glowing signs instead of a light being cast on the sign.
But what he's asking about is whether that then restricts them to only having internally illuminated.
No.
signs as opposed to having
You can have security
He's
lights.
correct, we should put the word illuminated before signs as well. So any illuminated signs shall be internally illuminated.
Pardon?
That's not what you have here. If you wanted the Kirkland's one,
they might want
that's
to-
not internally lit.
That Kirkland sign to me is.
That's not internally lit. If that's what you're looking at, something like that,
To me,
that's
that
not
doesn't
what
seem
she's
like-
talking about.
To me, that doesn't seem internally illuminated. That seems like,
not.
that seems illuminated.
Yeah, that's not internal.
No.
Just
But it
illuminate.
certainly meets the, not facing at the neighbors or anything.
Right, but it's not what she's offering us there.
Right. We don't want to limit it to internally illuminated signs.
But what Lou originally said involved the word internal illumination.
Yeah.
We don't want to.
So illumination, strike internal.
So any illuminated signs shall be placed on the east side of the building so as not to cast light, etc.
Yes.
Light on the neighborhood.
Cast downwards.
No.
Yeah,
On the residential neighborhood.
shall be cast downwards in a manner not to cast light onto neighboring properties.
Any illuminated signs shall be placed on the east side of the building so as not to cast light on the neighboring properties. However, that manages to happen. Do you want it to have either internal illumination or downward?
I don't think, however they want to do it, as long as they comply to that.
As long as they're not casting light on neighboring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
Okay, did somebody want to move this now?
Somebody with itching hand syndrome should make that motion.
that's you.
Without, I meant.
Oh, okay. I'll move what Stephanie just said.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got Steve making the motion and Donnie seconding it. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as stated by council, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This one passes. Okay, at this time, is there any other discussion on the conditions?
Yes.
Don?
Condition number 4. I would strike everything which were stated as. To strike everything after limited to and insert 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Question.
Well, we need a second to that. Is there a second?
10 p.m. is too late.
Well, what would you like, sir? What will you second?
Motion has died for lack of a second
Yeah.
already.
Not yet.
Yeah, it has. You'd have to amend it.
Call again for the second.
Yeah, I did call for a second twice. Do I have to do it 3 times?
Did they ask for these?
So,
I'm thinking maybe 7 to 7 sounds reasonable, and if they only want to be open till 5, that's fine.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
The La Crosse airport flight comes in at like 9:15, so if someone flies in to buy a car.
Which I have happened. That's the,
Thrown out there.
so we would rather not have too many additional restrictions, but
you're right.
I would like to indicate that we'll have families. We have no intention of running several shifts at this location. But it does happen that we get this one-off type of circumstance. Now, like I said, the use of this building is.
What were we currently limited to? Wasn't it?
Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, Saturday 10 to 3, Sunday closed, is what is on our,
So where are you reading that? Where am I?
page 2 of the, page 10 of our packet.
Sunday's not mentioned, it's just totally eliminated.
Oh, it says Sunday closed.
council,
And you're in a different.
does our
The
ordinance
condition doesn't have.
say
You're right.
that if you're, does it say that there isn't exceptions to hours of operation, or can you take and say, well, this guy called me and
So
it's just a one-time exception, or what are we up against here?
So apparently the petitioners aren't aware that these restrictions have been put in here.
The hours of operation condition comes from the petitioner's own application, what they represented as being the hours of operation. So if they're saying that that's not what their hours of operation are going to be, then that's different than what was represented in the petition.
Okay.
Now, I believe that that's what they're saying, is that those are the hours of operation that are going to be regular hours, Monday through Friday and on Saturdays. But what they're saying is they don't want to be restricted to that if there's some, special case that they need to stay late, and have somebody who's coming in on a non-regular basis.
Do we already have language to handle that situation that we use?
Some of those hours also came from a requirement that we be available for inspection by the state during certain hours. So that's where we have to have some hours, that we have to be available for certain hours for inspection. But with the state, that doesn't restrict us to only operating during those hours.
The location seems really ideal along an interstate and somewhat separated from a neighborhood, that if they want to be there at 9 in the evening, it seems like it's a good fit. Are you going to have any high performance, loud, straight pipe cars in there?
We'll really be a good neighbor. I mean, that's the situation. In fact, I would bet that some of the Bobcats down the street are.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, we're not an implement dealer. These are street legal cars.
So ideally, you'd like to be able to. What hours?
I know that right now, for instance, it isn't incredibly weird to do bookwork on Sunday. I know that it isn't incredibly weird to.
What kind of hours are ideal to you? Let me ask you that.
I don't know that I really see a need for a restriction.
Yeah.
So we're saying they can be open at 2 a.m. That seems kind of weird.
They're not going to be there, well, maybe doing bookwork.
Is that 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.? Does that?
I think, well, since it's a community development area and it's mixed use and there is residential in proximity, I tend to agree that totally unlimited is maybe not.
Council, is there something we have to have about that, or?
There's not. I think it's just a condition that we've seen a number of times related to businesses that are near homes like this.
I have a question for Lou, if I could.
Okay, Kelly has a question for Lou.
Okay, hours of operation for a car sales organization would typically be when you are selling cars. if you're in your office
That's really
doing
hard.
bookwork, that's not really hours of, you can go there anytime you
Yeah,
want.
it's usually when you're welcoming customers.
Right, so,
When there's, I mean, it could be when there's on-site, there's employees, working on, I mean, it depends on the nature. For auto sales, if it's office work, I guess I wouldn't call, if they're not open
right,
for customers.
that's the key,
call it hours
being
operation.
open. Okay, thank you.
Don?
Commissioner Jacob, would you be willing to go 7 to 12, 7 to midnight, 7 a.m. to midnight?
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is, what if we just strike the hours of operation, or
I like that.
it doesn't really say that they can be open all hours, it's just, I don't know. Yeah, probably this board is gonna be more comfortable with picking hours that they can be open, so, yeah.
Kelly?
Could I ask you a question again, Lou? Do you typically have hours of operation for something like this or not?
Well,
You said you put these in here because they were on the application,
Right,
so.
we typically for business petitions, it's not abnormal for us to include hours of operation. Usually, most of them would have hours of operation included, but it all depends on the nature of the business.
A lot of times we're dealing with something like a welding shop in a rural community,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Gotcha.
This is really the right fit for that location. I mean,
Thank you.
So what hours are you thinking, 7 to
Well,
12?
my motion was to remove it. And you would propose to amend it.
But there was no second on the.
And
Does
what-
7 to 10 sound good to everyone?
I mean, I'm also okay if we had language that indicated that they could have one-off customers sometimes, but I don't know.
I'm good with 7 to 10,
Yeah,
just
that would
let's
be
get this done.
So-
It's
Midnight would be
ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
What is the motion we have on the floor?
There's no second to it.
I don't think there is a motion.
No.
The last thing I have in my notes is Don made a motion to amend condition 4 to hours of operation be between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. and the motion died for lack of a second.
Okay.
So that's the motion that's on the table right now, 7?
No, that one died for lack of a second.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I move that we strike condition number 4.
Is there a second to that? We sure get silence here. Is there a second to the motion to strike number 4? Is there a
No, yeah.
Is there a second to the motion to strike number 4?
Okay, it
It
died.
dies for lack of a second.
So your previous motion was 7 to 10?
I asked you if you'd go 7 to midnight.
Okay. I'll make a motion to have the hours of operation be 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there, Lou? Okay.
How would you feel about regular business hours? The wording, which would then allow for the odd case where they might have a single customer. They're not open, but they have a customer there at 9:15.
I like that.
Yeah,
So
That's good.
hours of,
Regular business hours.
gotcha,
No,
they're allowed to have regular business hours.
right.
Regular business hours would be that, but that doesn't preclude them doing things outside of that if the oddball
Yeah,
arises.
I like that.
How is that different from really just striking it?
Let's not get technical, Steve.
that can be interpreted very narrowly depending
I
upon
think I'm
who's
just not
doing the
quite following
interpretation.
everything. So what,
What I'm hearing is that if we amended this to say hours of regular operation at the site shall be limited to blah, 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 means it's what they said, but regular operations isn't when they bring one person in to sell them a car, it's
oh,
when
you're
they say,
saying add
we're open.
regular operations to the hours.
Yeah, right.
Okay, all right.
Oh, regular operations to.
So I wasn't understanding it. Okay.
It's just adding the word regular to what's already here. It would be regular hours of operation at the site shall be limited to those specified in the application materials. And that would be, that's normal business. Outside of normal business, it's not precluded.
But are we still putting the,
It's up to you.
That's another question.
Yeah, we have to decide.
can you restate that, Stephanie?
I don't know whether I was want to do regular hours of operation or hours of regular operation? Probably hours of regular operation at the site shall be limited to, and then whatever you would want thereafter. The original conditions were read to those specified in the application materials, or you could do the 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., whatever you wanted to insert.
I would go with regular hours operation between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. That would leave leeway for operation beyond 7 to 10.
The applicants clearly didn't want what was on the application, so.
So you accept that friendly amendment? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's really, I don't even think we got to a second.
Yeah, we did finally.
Okay,
Mark seconded it.
okay, all right.
The application does not include Sunday operation. The application does not include Sunday operation, so it should not refer to the hours that are on the application.
Well, it doesn't, so.
Well, it does, it just did, or,
No,
Just,
7 days a week.
What I said was, the hours of regular operation of the site shall be limited to, the way it was previously written was those specified, or we can do whatever this group wants to discuss.
can you restate your motion?
Vince?
The friendly?
If I can just comment, I think we're trying to patch a bucket that isn't leaking. My bank is open every night at midnight with 3 cars in the parking lot, and nobody cares. I feel as though if he picks up somebody at the airport in La Crosse and brings them in to sell them a Maserati or whatever it is you sell, we might be the only people in Winona County that care about that.
Right.
And we'll be sleeping anyway.
Yeah. Along those same lines,
So you'd say just strike the.
I think regular hours of operation, and I really don't think the neighbor seems a very agreeable person. The neighbors do. I think we have just regular hours of operation, we will achieve what we were, and just leave it be. And then if he wants to bring in somebody later, I don't know. I certainly don't care. I don't think it's.
they aren't technically open, they're just doing business.
So how would you suggest it reads? Or, I mean, that seems like we just should strike it.
Don?
No, it seems like you should insert the word regular into what's there already, or what you want to say, whatever.
Yeah, but then you're eliminating this, there's not much left of that condition if you.
we should not allow regular hours of operation to exist alone without us including what those regular hours of operation are, because somebody in the future could make the point that regular hours of operation belong to the bank.
Yeah, or that the regular hours of operation are 9 to 5.
Yeah.
That's what I say regular hours are. So I think we should specify the.
We should include 7 to 10 as regular hours of operation.
So I'll try to restate. Hours of regular operation at the site shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Mark seconds this one too. You're doing good, Mark. Any further discussion? I guess before we have a vote, this happened several years ago, but I had a neighbor that got a little carried away and he spent nearly $200,000 on a tie stall barn when that was a lot of money, but it was a long time ago. And the guy that did the plumbing work got a call on Sunday morning from the lender and said, I'm at the bank. If you get here today, you'll get paid. If you come tomorrow, you won't get paid. So I don't think they went down to the county and asked him if it was okay to unlock the door for him to come in. I think you boys will agree to that logic. Okay. All right. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It carried. At this time, I believe we need to vote on docket number 1.
Need a motion to approve,
Oh.
recommend approval of the conditional use permit.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I will so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Chris moves and Kelly seconds. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the following conditions as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the conditions have passed, so now we need a vote on the conditional use permits approval.
That was it. That was it.
Oh, with the conditions.
Yeah.
Okay, did you get that down in? Okay, I'll agree with that. So, the next thing is, it goes before the county commissioners. And we have recommended approval, but they get to do the next vote. You'd have to ask somebody that's in charge of that. I'm sure that they will notify you. The commissioners will notify you. July 10th, Ann says.
Probably on the July 10th meeting, it sounds like. There isn't notification, but there is public notice of county board meetings, and we can talk about what that process looks like. So.
Okay, then I believe we got docket number 2 next. Docket number 2 is to consider the petition of Brent and Allison Johnson of 135 Penn Drive, St. Charles, Minnesota, in regards to the following conditional use permit. Staff?
Okay, this is a petition for less than 40 acres. It's going to be approximately 15 acres. And the reason that it's needed is because of Chapter 5, which pretty much specifies the 10 criteria that we're looking for. And in Chapter 10, it's saying anything less than 40 acres needs to have a conditional use permit. Some of the reasons that this is limited is because emergency services, it impedes on the agricultural use. We're trying to preserve prime soils, and we're trying to avoid conflict from land use. And we're trying to maintain the viable agricultural economy. Hopefully that comes back relatively soon. And to maintain the rural character of the county. This is a map that pretty much shows where the prime soils is, and that square is showing you where approximately the house is going to be located. That will come later with a development certificate and the septic permit. That, I got a little bit. I'll point it out. But the 15 acres is this area where there's a tree line, and there's a little bit of prime soil in here, and this is all ag field. Over here is Highway 74.
On the section line?
What's that?
On the section line?
Right. Well, pretty close.
I don't see it.
Yeah, it's covered up with the prime soil
Oh,
location.
that curved line, like a contour line, or almost. Okay.
And like I said, this one will be taking up 1.4 acres of type 2E soils, which is approximately 9% of the parcel. We do not know exactly how big the parcel is, and that's why there's approximately 9%.
So it has not been surveyed?
It has not. Oh, it has been surveyed. Okay.
Legal description or a survey?
Legal survey. The farmer who would be buying from survey, 16.27 acres.
Okay. So then that's actually less than percentage-wise. And, this is a little bit hard to see, but this is the area, like I said, this is what's wooded area where they're going to be proposing to build. And so this is the one with the corn is pretty much where it's pointing out to the location. And the wooded area is the picture that's taken where they're approximately going to be building. I'll kind of go back. So again, I'll show you that picture of the corn was pretty much taken here like this, and they're proposing to build in here, which was the woodland.
Where does the driveway come in?
The driveway will be adjacent to existing driveway. They're gonna be building a new driveway off of 74.
Can you show me right on the map where the driveway will be?
There's an existing driveway for these two houses, and this one's gonna be parallel to that. So the landowner.
And then run along the woods edge over to the house?
Right.
Okay.
So the farmer will still be using that, and they'll be using the new driveway also.
So the existing driveway's probably south of the section line, and theirs will be north of the section line.
Correct. Oops. Where am I? Okay. Any questions?
Was there any can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Was there any consideration of sharing Wilson's driveway, or was that not brought up?
It was drawn on the permit with a separate driveway, so you would have to ask them if there was some consideration on that.
And then you have in here County Highway Department approval of the driveway. Wouldn't it actually be the State Highway Department?
Yeah, I believe you're correct. Yes.
I do have, this is such a minor thing. Page 39 of our packet, the slopes range from 6 to 15%, except that when you have the number, it says 2%?
That's a good question.
Good point.
You can see that there's quite a bit of difference with those contours. So where they're building would be lesser percent, and it changes relatively quick.
There's parts of the parcel that have steeper slopes, but not where they're building.
It's just a typo. What I'm saying is it's just a typo. You say that it's from 6 to 15%, but then you have, in addition to the written number, you have the numeral, and it has 2 and not 6.
In parens, you have 2.
Oh, okay.
After you just stated 6.
It's a minor point, that's all I'm telling you.
Okay.
So it's probably 6 should belong in the parens.
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
Any other mistakes?
Well, considering that's it, it's pretty dang good.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, at this time, does the petitioners care to make any comments? Please state your name and address before you make your comments.
Good evening. I'm Brent Johnson, St. Charles, Minnesota, 135 Penn Drive. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Allison Johnson. I'll pass this around, but I just wanted to show you guys something on the screen. Initially, we had planned to build right here, but it's actually going to be closer because there's no slopes in here. And we did talk to one of the brothers, and we initially had thought about using their driveway, but it's so steep at the top, and we didn't want to take away a lot of the woods. I'm a bull hunter, so I want to preserve that as much as possible. So we would use just a part of their driveway and then just run it along the edge here. We had an agreement with Gerard if we bought it that we'd keep about 6 feet of trees around minus our driveway area to protect the field. But yeah, it would be more in here where there's no slope, but I can pass around the survey as well.
Okay, do you have additional comments, or?
So I have a quick question for you. So you said if you were going to use part of their driveway, then wouldn't that be the part that enters Highway 74?
Correct.
Yeah, it's.
So you don't need
it's
So
like
then you don't-
from the desk
so then they wouldn't
to
need
here, it's
the
a very
state.
small portion.
It'd be
just
the-
to get in.
Yeah, but it is the part that connects to 74.
Correct.
So then the state is going to like that better. They want as few entry points as possible.
Right,
So-
we're not creating any additional
Okay.
entryway or anything
And
like
you'll
that.
have to have your own agreement with them for,
That'll be in the right of way.
There'd have to be a recorded easement in accordance with ordinance.
that's their deal.
Yep. Okay. Don, do you have a question?
Testimony about it being 16.9 acres was made back there, not for the record, maybe she should restate that.
Oh, yeah, would you please state that?
Yes, on the docket, it actually said 15. After the survey, it came back as 16.27 acres.
Okay, thank you. Okay. At this time, do I hear a motion to have a public hearing on docket 6-21-18-02?
I'll move.
Chris moved, Mark seconds. All those in favor of opening the public hearing say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to speak to docket number 2, please step forward, state your name and address, and whatever comments you'd like to make. Anyone wishing to speak to docket number 2, please step forward and state your name and address and make your comments. For the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak to docket 6-21-18-02, please step forward, state your name and address, and make your comments.
I move we close the public hearing.
Don moves, we close the public hearing.
Second.
Kelly seconds it. All those in favor of closing the public hearing say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The public hearing on docket number 2 is now closed. Any discussion before we get into the findings of fact? Everybody's busy reading. I don't know if that's good or bad. Anyone have any problems with any one of the, is there 7 findings of fact here? No, there's 10, right?
I guess I'm just wondering how it's determined that it's not acceptable as a long-range land use for the county as evaluated against the comp plan.
Which one is that?
Number 9.
I believe
We all find number 9. Okay.
The removal of prime soils it has been emphasized in a couple of places in the comp plan as well as in the zoning ordinances. So the placing of small individual or carving up of agricultural land with properties dotted around the countryside was not consistent with what was voted on for the comprehensive plan. There's plenty of reasons why it's occurring. We all know what they are, but it wasn't part of that plan. That recommended agricultural and natural resource activities for the site where there is prime land. There's slightly less than the 9% of the staff report because of the certificate of survey, and so that was probably why that was on there. So that percentage probably shrunk a little bit.
But it says the proposed density is not determined. If they, that's why they're applying for the conditional use. They're allowed, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a density issue.
It explains it on the, right underneath it, though.
But our packet, page 41, the proposed density is determined to be acceptable. Oh, staff analysis, right?
Are we talking about 9 or 10?
9.
Yeah, you're right. Yep,
It
yep.
wasn't what they were suggesting had been met.
Gotcha.
Don.
But when is a variance required when we're dealing with prime land?
When you get to more than what percent, like?
40%.
Yeah.
So why are we even concerning ourselves with, I mean, why are we stating that it's not determined? Because if it's not, if it doesn't require a variance, it should be determined to be acceptable as a long-range land use.
I'm kind of thinking I'd rather just not see 9 in there.
Well, you can't not have it. You either got to approve it or not approve it.
I would amend that we strike the word not.
Council?
Part of the,
Just a reminder that not all of these criteria have to be met for a conditional use permit. With a variance, you do. You can still recommend approval of a permit even if some of these findings cannot quite meet there.
regardless of that, I think not should be struck.
You can't do that. That is, no, you cannot. Well, not in this context.
Motion.
I'm sorry, you can't. That is part of the zoning ordinance.
What
You
is?
cannot make a change to the zoning ordinance.
No, that's not what he's suggesting. What he's saying is that the finding should be the proposed density is determined to be acceptable, not that it's not. So he's saying that.
Oh, I thought you were wanting to take away the
It
criteria.
seems like
I'm
exactly
sorry.
why we created the 1 per 40
Right.
rule, or, the 40-acre conditional use permit need. I mean, that seems to be why they're here, and the crux of the application is that they're trying to meet this. So I agree with Don that it.
Is that a second?
Yeah, I'd second it.
Okay, we have a motion to strike not out of 9 under the findings of fact, and it's been seconded by Steve. Any further discussion? Mark?
Just a question, the is not, isn't that the county's position of, the staff's position of if it meets it or not?
Yeah, that's their evaluation.
That's their evaluation, so we're changing their evaluation then?
No, they make an evaluation, but we get to decide. So we can
Is that
say-
clear?
We can say their evaluation is incorrect.
Stephanie?
if we want it.
We put together the draft based on what staff analysis is. You do have the ability to modify that to meet what your recommendations are. However, if you're changing it from the is not to is, you do need to provide findings based on the record to support that change and provide that language, or at least bullet points so that I can put together an appropriate finding for that.
I have some findings to.
Every one of these 1 per 40 or conditional uses on less than 40 would be a bullet. And that's what we do at most of these meetings is approve.
And given that it's 9% rather than 40 of prime soils or whatever, and does not require a variance, that's all we need for a finding.
Now, are we all clear here? Okay. All those in favor of condition or findings of fact number 9, changing the wording by striking not, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, the striking of not is passed.
Can we have a voice record who that vote, please?
Sure, I guess.
Somebody did that to me once. And
Okay.
Right, so we aren't providing the finding to support the change. This is why I was making a face, right? So we're not, you stated some comments, right? But I think we need to make sure that those get captured, so.
They are captured, right? Council, you've got them, right?
The only comment that I managed to get as far as what an actual finding based on the record was that because it's less than 99% prime soils as opposed to the 40% which would require variance.
Steve, you had it.
And it's in harmony with all the other on less than 40-acre conditional use permits that we've done. I mean, I can't count the amount of these that we've done. It meets that same density as those did, and that's why that was put in the ordinance.
And just to make a comment, I support the conditional use permit completely. We had this conversation several times about the numbers, right? And I think the deal is that in terms of the desirability, with 200 being the least desirable, this property score is between 161 and 180, making it not desirable for development.
That doesn't have anything to do with this findings of fact, does it?
Yeah, it does.
It does.
It is?
It's that,
We're
yeah.
replacing that with whatever you're basing the finding that it is determined to be acceptable.
Right.
And we've had this discussion.
We have had this discussion many times.
Time and time again about the score, and that all needs to be revisited, and we totally disregard that score.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Evanson, you disregard it. I do not.
Well, many of us do.
All right, now, I've been requested to ask for a show of hands on this motion that we voted on. So all of those in favor of
striking the word not.
Striking the word not out of findings of fact number 9, raise your hand. So we got 4. And all those opposed striking the word not out of findings of fact number 9, raise your hand. So we got 4-2, so it does pass. Okay, is there any other findings of fact that you have comments about?
Steve, Commissioner Jacob, did you have some comment about 10?
I was looking at it, but I haven't made a comment on it, no.
None.
Why is it not consistent?
There's another dwelling right there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's 2 more dwellings right there.
So the staff analysis says that 2 parcels does not make a pattern.
Does this have, Chuck, does this have anything to do with subdivision or not?
Not really, I mean, so, there are 2 houses relatively close.
But that's the only,
Right, and we're trying not to extend it.
Director Kay?
Mr. Zahner is exactly right. What we're seeing where we're starting to get clusters of houses put together is all of a sudden there's a complaint about outside storage, or somebody was driving their tractor at 3 a.m. And so my understanding when I've read the documents that were passed by the county board was trying to protect the agricultural practices by not dotting a lot of houses or creating small enclaves or patterns. So if you're looking at, there's only 2 there now, you put a 3rd, or if you put a 4th, are you creating the pattern? So that is probably why the staff report says it's not consistent with existing residential pattern, because the majority of the pattern in that area is more stretched out agricultural, fewer dwellings. So you're adding 2 or creating a pattern if you're permitting 3, 4, 5. Well, I don't know what the number is, but that would be probably the reasoning I would say from staff. So.
Does anyone on the commission have a problem with leaving it the way it is and just accepting that the total number of findings of fact and get on with it?
Yeah,
I would second that motion.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right. Don?
There was a motion?
I didn't think there was.
No, there's no motion. I just asked if that was
Then
acceptable.
I didn't hear a motion.
Okay. No, I didn't make it as a motion.
I'll make that motion then.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. So now we've got a motion. Would you state that, Kelly?
I move that we accept the findings of fact other than
As amended.
exception of number 9, density is determined. And.
That's as amended then.
Yeah, as amended. Thank you. Yes,
Okay. And Chris seconded that.
yes.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the findings of fact as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The findings of fact are approved. All right, now we got to go to the conditions, I presume. And there are 5 of them. Does anyone have any discussion on them?
Well, we probably could apparently strike number 2 because they're using a different driveway.
Oh, we don't know that yet. But
Yes, we do, they
They
said.
said they were at
This forces them to put in a driveway. Or an access to Highway 74.
We've got a separate driveway except for the beginning of the driveway.
Yeah,
yeah,
but what
but
number?
that's the part that counts, right, council?
But, so it specifically says,
If there's gonna be a portion of a new driveway, they do need to comply with the requirements.
yeah, but it says specifically to receive a permit from the Winona County Highway Department. First of all, as Vince stated, it's not a Winona County highway or Winona County road. And second of all, they said that they're not accessing the road. So
I move that we strike everything beyond the comma.
Chris?
Sorry, I didn't mean to drag it out. Is there any chance you'd change your mind? Okay.
It would be a huge hassle.
So now,
I want us to do something that like restricts then what they can do because it changes later.
Question.
Mark?
Yours will be the third house on that driveway? Just, but I'm talking about just where,
Can we find out if there's a second to the motion?
Yeah, I'm trying. Is there a second to this motion?
The motion was to strike number
Two.
two.
Was that your motion? No.
that never got seconded.
John made the motion?
I made the motion to strike everything beyond the comma. I don't know if they got a second.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, all right. So now we've got a motion to strike in number 2 on the conditions, everything beyond the comma.
You had a question.
And it's seconded already, right?
And it's seconded, yes.
I think so.
And Mark has a question.
All right, Mark, another question.
discussion time.
All right.
Okay, that's the third driveway off that easement. Now, a few months ago, we did one, and when they had 3 people come off one, aren't they required to do something different then? Because they had to change their addresses, and when Herbers did that.
I remember that.
That they had, because with 2 it was fine, but when they added the third one, then they had to, he's running away before we can ask him the question.
This, if I can,
I'm just asking, I just remember with that one, with the other one we did.
I'm familiar with them because I was there when the Wilsons built on top of the hill. And it's 2 families way up at the top using one driveway. And 2 semi-retired guys. These folks are saving prime land by joining that and avoiding getting access to the state highway. They're saving prime land by not going through the cornfield.
I think this is just a
I'm
technical.
all for this, I'm all 100% for it, don't get me wrong, and it sounds like it's just the easement or the right-of-way anyway where they're using, and that's fine. My only question is a legal one, is are we missing something here that if we've made someone else, that the,
He has to change, do they have to change the
they
address?
have to change their address and
Yes.
things like the previous one that we did a few months ago did?
I don't remember that.
You weren't here.
Lou knows.
Lou's looking it up?
Yeah.
Section 14.4 of the Winona County Road Naming and Numbering Criteria. Privately owned roadways that support 3 or more dwellings shall be assigned a road name in accordance with this chapter.
3 or more.
And that'll be number 3?
These road names.
It's 3 or more, so we're not going beyond 3.
3 is 3.
Oh,
Not-
3 or more.
3 or more.
Yes, you have.
So,
But is that just administrative? Do we need to do anything with that?
Yeah, do
You'll
we?
you'll just do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to, yeah, exactly. I mean, we'd have to reassign, we'd have to name it a private lane and.
Do you need, at the planning
People would have
department,
to
do you
do
guys
an
need
address.
Mark to come down and check anything else over?
He's welcome to.
But that doesn't
But we don't
obligate us to have to work on it, does it?
No, if they use that driveway, that would happen. It doesn't.
but you don't need any
That
conditions.
isn't
from us
anything
or
for the
anything.
conditional use permit, right?
Correct.
Okay, we're
Okay.
good.
So my motion would be
Good
appropriate.
catch.
I just know we just did that.
Yeah. Okay, now, are we gonna vote on Donnie's motion here, or, is there further discussion, or?
Go for it.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion to strike everything after the comma in condition number 2, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It passes. Any other questions, concerns about the conditions?
I'll move to adopt the petition with the conditions as amended.
I'll second it.
Okay, Steve moved.
Go ahead.
Is that a motion to recommend approval of the
Yeah.
permit with the attached conditions?
Yes. All right, and Mark seconded it. Seeing no fingers waving, all those in favor of the motion to recommend the approval of a conditional use permit with the 5 conditions, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This conditional use permit is recommended by the Winona County Planning Commission to the commissioners. And you heard from the last one when that probably will be? Good luck. It sometimes takes longer to get the permits than it does to get the sticks. Okay, at this time, let's go to the third item on our agenda, or maybe it isn't even, I guess it's under old business, number 6. Is that you, counsel, or is that Lou, or who's?
You're supposed to do that.
No, I'm not doing that.
Today. So we have a new proposal or option for you to consider. That's in your packets.
It's on page 69, right?
71, 69.
71 is the red line version of.
Okay, but it starts on 16.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you found it?
There's a memo and then
It's
the red
not
line
under
version.
old business. It is right there after the last docket.
Printed it off at home. Right here, page 69,
I don't have it.
71.
Starts on.
You don't have
You can look in mine, see if there's some.
65, okay. Maybe I do. Thank you. Okay.
No, so it's after the second docket, not under old
Yeah,
business.
not under old business. Go back.
I'm sorry.
There we go.
Kind of like confused me too?
There you go.
Got it. Thank you.
Everybody find the red line version. So this one is a little simpler. This would not involve changing, creating a new category of, for interim uses within each chapter of the zoning districts. This would just be located within, it would be adding a definition and be located within Chapter 5. And then simply changing the headings in the zoning districts to include IUP. So it'd be CUP, IUP.
CUP or IUP.
It'd be, yep, either or. So they would all be potentially an IUP if they were to meet the definition of an interim use, and you so chose to add a sunset date and a specific time for it to expire.
So,
And if you did not do that, it would just be a conditional use permit.
is it at the discretion of, or both the applicant, the planning commission, and the planning department? They can all look at it. The petitioner can say, this is what we want, or the planning commission can say, we think this would be a better fit, and so there's agreement.
It allows for that conversation, yes.
It can be either or. Okay, that seems like a pretty good way to go.
One additional thing is that the findings of fact, such as you saw tonight, all of them would then be revised to have a condition, a final condition on them that would say the use does or does not have an identifiable date or event for termination. So if there's a finding that it does, then it becomes an IUP. If there's a finding it does not, it's a CUP. And then if it's IUP, then that language related to that date would be part of it. So it would simplify that process as well.
Question. Can we make every one of them an interim use permit then?
No.
Theoretically,
If the commission decided to.
but
Every one of them that where it says either or.
there are some that don't lend themselves well to being an interim use permit, things like, the house or the property building on less than 40 acres, things like that. That's going into perpetuity. That's designed to be a permanent thing to happen. That should follow with the land. It shouldn't be an interim use permit. Things like the auto dealership, on the other hand, should be, as long as it's running as a business. When it ceases to operate as an auto dealership, then it would be an interim use permit, because when that ceases, then it would stop and no longer be valid.
But it's okay, so right there, if I'm the petitioner, I would have the option to say, I want it to be a conditional use, because then maybe my business is more saleable into the future.
And you can ask for that. And one of the things too is you can have it be a business that, as long as it's operating as that, then it can continue. So you could sell your business, and as long as it continued operating as that kind of business, it would be fine. Or the condition, like we've seen some of them, like a home occupation, as long as the owner is running this business. So you tie it to the person, you tie it to the business itself. There's a lot of different ways that you can tie an interim use permit and define what that event is going to be. It just gives a lot more flexibility for when something will conclude. But the thing is, if there's a point at which you want that.
If we've got a large group gathering, obviously it's a one-time event, and we don't want that to run with it, so.
I think where it's critical is where you are specifically wanting to, in the conditions, you're wanting to attach a condition that says at this date, this is for this time period, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it'll allow you to do that.
Kay?
So the Minnesota State Statute 394.303 for interim uses says, interim use is a temporary use of property till a particular date or until the occurrence of a particular event, etc. So if the hot mix plant, expanding Highway 90 is done, the highway project's done, obviously you don't want it to go into perpetuity. Maybe that's an example.
Okay, excuse me. After you said after date, I didn't hear that other phrase.
Or until the occurrence of a particular event.
Oh.
So say the Planning Commission had permitted a second mobile home, or an accessory home, like a piece of manufactured housing for an elderly parent, that something happened, either they went into a home, they were deceased, that occurrence when that person or second agricultural worker was no longer needed, whatever the Planning Commission has before them.
Whatever event, yeah.
Yeah, I think the manufactured home one is a really good example of the event where they're applying for home health care. A person that's going to be living there who's going to be taking care of a person in the primary dwelling. So you would state, usually it's inherent in the application itself, that once it's no longer being used for home health care, then the manufactured home needs to be removed, or there needs to be a change of use to something other than that, and it has to fit in under the ordinance some other way. So that'd be a good example of an interim use permit for something like that. The ordinance wouldn't actually allow it any other way.
Don?
I don't know where to begin. I wish you'd wait until I'm term limited off the board so you could deal with this when I'm off the board after the end of the calendar year. I would be ashamed to support this. Starting on page 69, state statute reads, or until zoning regulations no longer permit it. Okay, if we adopt the IUP thing, we're bound by statute. So zoning regulations might change, and the county would have to revoke the IUP by statute. So I can't support that. And going on, the second paragraph there under state statute, the Minnesota Attorney General has found. Well, it's a mere opinion of a state attorney general, and a different state attorney general might have a different opinion about this. Objective. Read the objective there. placing time limits on certain types of uses in IUPs which no longer permitted for this. We can avoid being in conflict with the statute without putting dates and times as a condition, and rely upon the statement of the petitioner that they're going to use it for manufactured home housing for workers. Should they deviate from that petition statement in the future, the county then has basis to act against them for continued use of the manufactured home other than for, say, agricultural services.
Okay, so let's go use the example of a temporary concrete facility to support work on a local road project. If the only way they can do that is through a permanent use, there's a very good chance that the neighborhood will not want it, and we won't be able to permit it. It won't happen. If we can give them an interim use, we've given them an option, a tool that's available that they didn't have before, the community might be fine with it. Say, yeah, if it's going to be there for 2 years and the project's done and they have to take it down, we want the new road. But they might not want a permanent mixing plant there for the rest of forever.
But if in their petition they state that as their intent, the county has grounds then to revoke the conditional use permit, because the permit isn't granted in condition with the intent of the petition.
The conditional use permits run with the land.
Pardon?
That's right.
The conditional use permit runs with the land.
I know that, but if they have stated in the petition that their intent is to terminate its use.
We don't have the option to terminate it.
Pardon?
We don't have any option to terminate it.
We do, because it's in the petition and they have to abide by the petition.
Council?
It's a use. We're changing the use of the property.
I disagree with Commissioner Evanson. I know we put this condition in all of our conditional use permits that they're going to comply with what they've stated. The problem with that is that it runs with the land. The records get destroyed. The recordings don't last forever. All we have tied to the land that actually gets recorded is the findings and the condition. So we might remember them saying something. We can't go back and prove it. I've had this discussion a number of times. That first condition is unenforceable. It would be very, very hard to go back and revoke somebody's permit if they didn't terminate what they said they were going to, something like that. The statutes give us the ability to do this, and we can't do it any other way. We can't just rely on their word because it's not enforceable.
Well, even whether that's the case or not, the applicant for the hypothetical concrete plant, if this tool is available and it's going to make the community much more at ease that they know it only is going to be there for 2 or 3 years, it probably makes the whole project much more likely to happen.
If this tool is available, the language of the statute is available, or until zoning regulations no longer permit. So the county changes the regulations, then every IUP is on the line to be revoked.
That's the same with
You
any.
would support that?
No.
That's the same with any zoning change.
So with respect to the point that was just made by Commissioner Evanson, that language would need to be in the conditions of the specific permit for it to be applicable. Is that correct?
No, it's statute.
Well, if what you're saying is true, Don, then anyone who's obtained almost any conditional use permit or development certificate, the board could change the zoning, and that's what
I think that,
non-conforming uses are, and
They're protected by the rule of law.
I think, Don, you do have a point with interim uses that is in statute that you can, that's the difference. One of the differences between conditional uses and interim uses is that it can be one of the ways that you can, terminate an interim use is by a change in zoning. So if the zoning ordinance was to change, that could be a trigger for ending the interim use permit. But I think that along with the way that it reads, a temporary use of property until a particular date, until the occurrence of a particular event, or until zoning regulation is no longer permitted, It could be either any of those three. You would have to decide which one of those would apply, and that's what would be attached to the condition.
So it would specifically be in the condition.
It would be specifically a particular date or a specific occurrence, or you could write into the condition until zoning regulations no longer permit it. And that's what the authority that the state gives us. That doesn't mean that's the authority that you need to use or adopt.
So what about another example for Don? A rock band comes and wants to set up a concert in, I don't know, someone's farm. Is that something that now would require a conditional use or not?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying, Don, that you want that to be into perpetuity and you don't want that event to be able to even have the option of getting in a permit that might be much more palatable to the community?
The county can rely upon what's in the petition of the intent of the petitioner as far as dates of the rock concert goes. Beyond that, it should become a matter of the courts, rather than we should tighten the noose of the rule of law on people by imposing laws.
I don't see it as tightening the noose of the rule of law. It's giving.
Council, do you have a comment or? Okay, well, you did at one point in this. All right. I have a question for someone. If we adopt interim use permits, does that mean that by your statement that if we change the zoning ordinance that we're not grandfathered in anymore?
That's right. Well, by definition, an IUP kind of has an end date anyway, so.
Am I right about this, Lou? We accept on the two dockets that we did tonight, we had some specific conditions.
Yep.
If it's a conditional use permit, we will have a condition and it will identify one of those three events. If it does not identify until zoning regulations no longer permit, then that is not a condition.
No.
Mr. Chair, the draft findings that I proposed when we were talking through how to make this work, it would basically read to allow for the following conditional use permit with the description as you see it and saw it tonight, until blank and so long as the following conditions are met. That's how this would be changed. So instead, right here where it says so long as the following conditions are met, it would just say until whatever date or event we chose to put in there, so long as the following conditions are met. And then there wouldn't have to be a finding relating to what that event was.
Okay, Vince?
As I read it, the proposal here, first of all, I shudder at the thought of Don having a rock concert. But, and I wouldn't want it to go in perpetuity. First of all, anyway, it'd be like a perpetual Lawrence Welk show. But
that isn't it.
That was the Attorney General is somebody who renders a legal opinion, and the Attorney General, as I read it, is trying to make this more usable for us by putting in a sunset date that we're more comfortable with. I think that for petitioners, it would make it much more utilitarian to have something concrete they can propose. And I'm thinking specifically about what somebody here was referring to, I think Lou was, I have several neighbors who have somebody there to attend to somebody with ALS or age or whatever. And they feel uneasy coming to us if they can say this is why they're there. They know that we're compassionate, and we know that at a certain date, it will no longer be required, and it's not going to turn into a trailer park. And I think for all of us, that's a utilitarian way of looking at it, that having these, the second bold print there is what makes it very usable and friendly to petitioners, I think.
So that maybe brings up a question, Jimmy. Would in the exact scenario that you're describing with manufactured home for healthcare, does the petitioner have the option to apply for either an interim or a conditional? Is that up to them?
It would be one one application, and the deciding factor is whether or not there's an end date or not. And that would be essentially up to the county board to make that decision, just like any other conditions.
So the petitioner can't apply for what they want to.
They can ask for it. They can put, I want this to go on forever, or I think this should have an end date. But just like any other condition that we have attached here, at the end of the day, it's up to the county board to make a decision about what's appropriate.
So to Don's concerns, anything that is a conditional use permit now, anyone could still apply for it as a conditional use permit, just as you want. But they would also have the option to say, hey, my rock concert, after it's done, I don't care, and if I can get the permit sooner, or my concrete plant, if I can get it easier because it's an interim, I think they have the option. If they want to make it conditional, they can. So that was the language really that we went back, we asked you to go back and work on, and I think you've given me the options that I was looking for.
It's obvious I'm fighting a losing battle here, so I'm about to concede. But this flies in the face of our unalienable rights and the common law and natural law, rights established there, and we're imposing our own version of law at the moment.
That's what we
The statute does not allow us to pick and choose upon particular date, occurrence of a particular date, or until zoning regulations no longer permit it. The face of the statute is very clear. And if the zoning regulations change, IUPs are to be pulled. And I cannot support this, I'm sorry.
I got a comment.
Mark.
I'm a big fan of this for the proper use. I do like the fact that you have the option, and hopefully, I'm not sure if I'm real comfortable with the county making the decision. The problem I have is if I'm a business person and I want to put my life savings into whatever it is I want to build, if I want to build a whatever and I need a permit for it, I don't want it to put my life savings into something and then 3 or 5 years later have the county board, change their law, and now there is no, if I would happen to get an interim one when I wanted a permanent one, and then the county board changes the zoning code and all of a sudden I'm out of compliance, that part I do not care for one bit yet.
I think that's just the way that we draft the permit language, which the way that it would be proposed at this point would be that it's until blank, so long as the following conditions are met. So if it says until it's no longer operated as this kind of a business, so long as the following conditions are met, change in zoning ordinance doesn't change that fact.
Okay, so that would not be in there, that would not be in all of them then?
Right.
Okay.
Not going back to bring up bad memories and all, but
Yeah, so that's what I've been thinking of at the same time too.
we could have said, you can have this permit to operate until we change the zoning ordinance to no longer allow this. But that would have had to be specific in there. As long as you can identify what the end date is, whether it's an ordinance change, an event, or that, identifying it's the way to go.
Prior to the language you drafted now, the intent was that any sand mine could have only obtained an interim use permit, right? Mm-hmm. If they want to come forward and apply for a conditional use permit, they still have that option, right?
Yeah, and it would be a conditional use permit unless there was a condition added that signified an end date to the operation. If there was no condition, then it wouldn't be an IUP.
And we always include in our conditions that the petitioners will stand by what they've asked for in the petition. The petitioner, in the case of a concrete plant, asphalt plant, sand mine, in their petition can state their intentions about continued use. If they choose to facilitate getting a conditional use permit, if they choose to state some date in their petition as a date certain for ending the operation, that's their prerogative, and the county can rely upon that.
And then it would be an interim permit.
In effect, it would be an interim permit without putting it into law and into ordinance.
It is law already.
It would be an interim permit.
Council?
Without having an interim use permit option within our zoning ordinance, we cannot have interim use permits with end dates regardless of how we get there. That's what the Attorney General's office opinion has stated.
Right.
And
That's why we're here.
to reiterate,
What are solar facilities going to be?
My guess is they would be, if we treat them like we've done so far, they would end up as an interim use permit. It would have that 25-year mark that we put on the previous ones. But
That's not, we haven't put a 25-year mark on any,
we had them on the conditional use permits that we had.
But would it still, couldn't it still be up to the applicant if they want to say, I'm going to convert it permanently?
It's like any other condition. It's up to the county board.
But if they want to apply for it as a conditional use permit, do they have the option to say, I want to apply for an interim or I want to apply for a conditional?
It's one application for either way. And if
Yeah.
there's an end date, it's an interim. If there's not an end date, it's a conditional.
yeah, they would have the option to say, to apply for something that did not have an end date or did not expire.
Yeah.
They could do that.
Okay, one more comment from Planning Director Kay, and then we're going to move on.
Mr. Chairman, and planning commission members, an interim use permit ending at a certain point does not preclude an applicant from coming back in to say, I'd like to continue the use, it's going great. That time period's expired, but guess what? The solar facility, I think, has got another good 5 years in it. I've made a significant investment.
And that's why we amended 5.5.4 paragraph, or friend 8, which allows for the renewal.
Yep.
So
Okay.
that's why that was inserted in there, to allow them to continue it past whatever the original date was. I'd also just remind the planning commission that if you're ready to go forward, what you're looking to do would be to take this to a public hearing. So if you're not making a decision today, one way or the other, it's a matter of, is it at a point where you would like to hold a public hearing on whether or not to amend the zoning ordinance?
Okay, at this point, Lou, do you have further comments farther down the line? Okay, so Stephanie just stated the obvious. What does the Planning Commission want to do from this point on? Don,
I move that this does not go to public hearing.
is there a second to this motion? Is there a second to this motion? That's all I have to ask, right, Council? Okay, the motion fails for lack of a second. So now what do we do?
Is it possible to have the hearing at our regular scheduled meeting?
Yes.
And are you interested in doing that instead of a special meeting?
Well, I don't think at this point that any of us really see the need for a special meeting, do you?
We do a special meeting when there's going to be something highly contentious that we know is going to cause a lot of speakers. So with this one, we can treat it just as a normal one.
Would we just be handling this one particular, the interim? Okay.
Plus whatever permit or CUPs or whatever we'd have to deal with for that month. But, now, Kate, this dress back thing, is that going to come up as a conflict? Because I don't think we want to try and do both of them the same month.
That hasn't come in yet.
That hasn't been, and we don't know that that's going to be on the agenda for next month.
So we could have it next month without any foreseeable or obvious conflicts. Okay, I'm open to suggestions, motions.
Do you need a motion from us?
I think you should,
What we're looking for is a motion to, initiate the amendment of the zoning ordinance with the.
should not come from the county commissioner.
Which then
Okay. Can I just say I so move? Sure. I do then.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
All right. Chris moves and Vince seconds the motion that council read. I hope we're all clear on what we're doing here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. And
You talk loud, but there's just only
I'm
one.
proud to have my be the lone dissenter on this and my name attached to it, so let the record do that, please.
Okay, thank you, Don. The motion is passed. We will have a public hearing on this subject, interim use permits, next month, I guess, barring anything else. Okay, now we, what do we do? Was there a Board of Adjustment meeting today? Who do we get to be the spokesman?
The chair is here, right? Are you the chair?
Well, then I guess step forward and say what you determined today then, because, well, the Board of Adjustment.
After listening to you, I'm not at the mic yet, but I'm not sure what's happened. This is one wild place compared. We approved a variance for, what did we approve that variance for? She's run away from me. She hasn't got a copy.
But she'll come back.
Yes, now let me just think, because I'm completely lost.
What was the vote? Was it?
It was 4-0.
Okay, so it was unanimous vote.
It was a unanimous vote, and it was.
So it wasn't controversial.
Oh, yeah, there you go. It was a 47-foot road setback. There is a gentleman that has a place there at the end of Melcher Drive. You're probably familiar with it out there. There next to Whitewater. It butts up against DNR land, and there's no houses within 2,000 feet, so we let him have his setback. The Whitewater Township didn't care that they did it, and no comment from them. And we also had an older building there that was going to come down. There was foundational building within that footage, so we approved it.
Good.
Thank you.
And could you get us a pointer that works? Because we didn't have this pointer working last month.
Does it just need a battery, maybe?
I don't know, but it would be helpful, so.
All right.
Now that I've knocked it over, it probably doesn't work.
Probably works better now.
Okay, county board update.
Yeah, we approved the Dennis Barth CUP at the county board level.
Okay, let's see, is there any other business that should be brought before us? Ann wants to get home just as bad as the rest of us.
I move we adjourn.
Vince moves we adjourn. Kelly seconds it. All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your attention.